The scavenger's hand was warm, trembling with a volatile mixture of residual adrenaline and profound disbelief. As his fingers locked with the vampire's ice-cold palm, the silence within the ancient stone cistern stretched, thick and suffocating. Above them, the distant, rhythmic thrum of the low sector's heavy machinery vibrated through the damp floorboards, a constant reminder of the mechanical prison operating right over their heads. The vampire did not move immediately. He stood like an ornate marble statue carved in a forgotten era, his crimson eyes boring deep into the youth's soul, searching for even the slightest flicker of deceit. His paranoia was not a simple defense mechanism. It was a living, breathing entity that had kept him alive, while the rest of his immortal kind was systematically wiped from the face of the earth. "What is your name, scavenger?" the vampire asked, his voice dropping into a dangerous, rhythmic baritone that seemed to ripple across the standing pools of stagnant water. The youth swallowed hard, his eyes darting briefly down to the vampire's elongated fangs before pulling his shoulders back with a stubborn pride. "Sealers," he whispered, clearing his throat to find his strength. "My name is Sealers, and if you're going to kill me or eat me, you might as well get it over with. It beats getting turned into cybernetic scrap by the corporate enforcers." The vampire let out a low, humorless chuckle that sent a genuine chill down Sealers' spine. "If I wanted you dead, Sealers, your throat would have been torn out before your enforcer friends could even raise their batons. I do not kill outcasts, I build them." Slowly, the vampire released the boy's hand and reached out, his long, pale fingers hovering just a fraction of an inch away from the heavy cybernetic data port embedded directly into the side of Sealers' neck. "Hold perfectly still. If you flinch, the network will register a terminal spike in your vitals, and every tactical unit within 5 sectors will descend upon this cistern." Sealers froze, his eyes wide as he stared blankly ahead. He could feel the unnatural, winter-like cold radiating from the vampire's skin. To a civilized human living in the glittering upper spires, what the vampire did next would have looked like absolute witchcraft. But down here, in the dark, it was an ancient, forgotten biology interacting with primitive machine logic. The vampire closed his eyes, tapping into the dormant psychic frequency of his bloodline. He didn't use a physical hacking rig or a corporate data slate. Instead, a subtle, dark red vapor began to curl outward from his fingertips, wrapping around the synthetic plastic and copper plating of Sealers' neck implant. The vampire's mind flooded with the digital architecture of the corporate network. He could see the live data streams tracing Sealers' exact biometric signature, his heart rate, his respiratory patterns, and the glowing blue tracker that flagged him as an unauthorized scavenger. With a concentrated flex of his will, the vampire introduced a localized biological anomaly into the stream. He didn't delete Sealers' file. Deleting it would trigger an automated system alert. Instead, he rewrote the underlying code using his own static-like immortal signature. To the automated corporate servers monitoring the low sector, Sealers' identity suddenly shifted from a living, breathing human target into a harmless, inanimate glitch, a dead sector in the grid that the system would automatically ignore. The embedded port in Sealers' neck clicked softly, its glowing blue indicator light sputtering twice before turning a dull, dormant gray. Sealers gasped, instinctively clutching his throat as a strange, soothing numbness washed over his nervous system. For the first time in his entire life, the constant, low-frequency digital hum that connected his mind to the city's network was completely gone. The silence inside his own head was almost deafening. It's gone," Sealers whispered, his hands shaking as he looked up at his savior. "The network feed, the tracking ping, I can't hear the corporate broadcasts anymore. How did you do that?" "I gave you your mind back," the vampire replied coldly, turning away to pace along the edge of the dark water. "The ruling elites engineered humanity's DNA centuries ago to ensure you would always be compliant, always trackable, and always dependent on their synthetic miracles. They made you forget what you truly are, so you would never question why they sit in golden domes while you drown in their waste." Sealers watched the vampire's tattered cloak billow behind him. The young scavenger reached into his heavy canvas satchel, his fingers brushing against a heavy metallic object he had risked his life to retrieve from the upper scrap heaps. "They were hunting me because of this," Sealers admitted, pulling out a cylindrical, tarnished data capsule wrapped in frayed copper wiring. I didn't know what it was, but the enforcers were ready to kill a dozen people just to lock down the sector it was in, I think. I think it's a piece of legacy hardware from before the Great Alignment. The vampire stopped dead in his tracks. His gaze snapped down to the tarnished cylinder in Silas's hand. For a terrifying moment, the jagged, ancient scar across the vampire's chest flared with a sudden, localized spike of heat. It wasn't the smooth, cold resonance from before. It was a sharp, jagged shockwave of burning pain that forced him to grip his own shirt. The phantom memory of his first friend's betrayal flashed violently behind his eyes. The gleaming edge of the relic weapon, the sound of tearing flesh, and the absolute horror of realizing he had been sold out to the corporate gods. The vampire forced his breathing to steady, his eyes narrowing as he stared at the capsule. Where did you find that, Silas? In the deep foundations beneath the third Tartarian dome, Silas explained, his voice growing frantic as he realized the weight of what he held. The corporate network is trying to excavate the entire sector. They're tearing down the old stone foundations and replacing them with cyber grids. I slipped through a ventilation shaft and snatched this from a sealed vault before they could melt it down. The vampire stepped closer, his physical presence overwhelming the small space of the cistern. He knew exactly what that capsule contained. It wasn't simple corporate data or financial records. It was a localized historical archive, a piece of the true, uncorrupted history of the world before humanity's bloodlines were altered, and the vampire race was systematically hunted into extinction. The fact that the corporate network was actively hunting for these capsules meant the weakened gods were growing desperate. They knew their psychological hold over the populace was fracturing, and they were trying to scrub the final remnants of truth from the earth. You have no idea the fire you are holding, boy, the vampire murmured, his eyes reflecting the dull gray light of Silas's disabled implant. If the celestial network or the tech angels find out this capsule is out of their vaults, they won't just send enforcers. They will purge the entire low sector with orbital fire. Silas didn't drop the capsule. Instead, his knuckles turned white as he gripped it even tighter, the defiant rage returning to his eyes. Then teach me how to fight them. You said there were two paths. You said I could learn to stand. The vampire stared at him, the heavy silence returning to the cistern. The internal battle raging inside his immortal mind was fierce. Every instinct honed over centuries of isolation told him to take the capsule, kill the boy to ensure absolute secrecy, and vanish deeper into the unmapped catacombs where no one could ever find him. Trusting a human had nearly cost him his life once before. The scar on his chest was a permanent testament to the foolishness of misplaced faith. But as he looked at Silas, a scrawny, dirt-covered scavenger standing defiantly in the face of absolute annihilation, he saw the spark. It was the same unyielding, rebellious fire that had burned within his own chest before the world was conquered by neon and false miracles. If he spent eternity hiding in the dark, he was already dead. There are two paths, the vampire said, his voice dropping into a solemn vow. The first path is the path of the blood. Those who choose it give up their humanity entirely. They are reborn into my lineage, granted the physical strength, the speed, and the immortal durability required to lead the frontline assaults against the corporate enforcers. But it is a path of endless hunger and eternal isolation. He stepped so close that Silas had to tilt his head back to maintain eye contact. The second path is the path of the mind. You remain human, but I will tear away the lies they have fed you. I will teach you the wiped historical truths, the forgotten sciences, and the metaphysical mysteries that the tech syndicates have spent centuries hiding. You will become the architects of their psychological downfall. You will break their control over the minds of the masses while the frontline bleeds. Silas didn't hesitate. He held the capsule out, offering it to the vampire like a token of absolute alignment. Teach me the mind. I want to know the truth. The vampire reached out, his cold fingers brushing against Silas's hand as he took the capsule. But before his hand could completely close around the metal cylinder, a devastating, deafening explosion ripped through the upper structural arches of the cistern. The ancient stone ceiling fractured violently, showering them in a cascade of heavy debris and suffocating dust. The cold, clear resonance within the vampire's chest scar instantly shattered, replaced by a blinding, white-hot flare of pure agony that brought him to his knees. It wasn't a cosmic alignment. It was a proximity alert. Through the thick cloud of falling dust, a massive, mechanical silhouette descended from the ruptured ceiling. It wasn't a standard patrol drone. It was a specialized, multi-limbed containment unit from the Celestial Network, its heavy armor plating glowing with an oppressive, high-frequency white light designed specifically to neutralize immortal biology. A synthesized, booming voice echoed through the crumbling chamber, locking onto their coordinates. Anomaly detected. Unauthorized data capsule located. Initiate sector purge.